Can anybody hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, good. How you doing? Good, all right. Let's see, I gotta look at the schedule. Okay, we're working on the chapter on circulation, chapter 8, the heart and blood vessels, kind of the transport system. This is our last organ system that we're studying physiology. And we're gonna work on this like 2 weeks instead of 1. So we're just starting it this week, and then at the end of next week, we'll have our 3rd exam. And that would cover the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the heart and blood vessels. So we're starting that this week. There's 2 fairly long little lectures that for you to look at. Let's look at the, let's share a screen and kind of go over some highlights of that. I think maybe this one. I'm not sure. Let me see here. Is that it? No, that's not it. Okay, let me go back and go to the other one. That'll be this one. Okay. All right, so blood vessels, circulation, stuff like that. This is all part of this kind of cardiovascular circulatory system type stuff. And so, well, let me get to see if I can work this. No. Okay, so this cardiovascular system, this transports lots of materials to and from organs in the body, including carbon dioxide and oxygen. That's really important. Nutrients, waste. Oh, can you see the functions page? Yes. Okay. So this is our main transport system. Carries nutrients like sugars and fats and amino acids to tissues. It also is moving waste products around and hormones and things like that. And this system is also important for regulation. By moving blood, we can regulate things. We need blood to activate many organs, to control our body temperature, water balance, sugar balance. All those things are kind of, blood is the place where this happens. And then blood also contains in it substances that promote blood clotting. It contains our immune cells. It contains lots of things. And so this has a really important series of functions. And the blood vessels carry the blood, and you have different types of blood vessels that are specialized for exchange. Some are specialized for high pressure. Some assist in blood movement. And so there's that kind of function for the blood vessels. Particularly important for that exchange of materials and movement of things in and out of organs are capillaries. Capillaries are small blood vessels with very, very thin walls. They're only 1 cell thick, and things can get out of the capillary. So inside the capillary is blood. Surrounding the capillary will be tissues. And so this narrow wall allows things to move through it. And so capillaries exchange materials. They're the vessels that are specialized to do it. When you have capillaries, they go from arteries to veins. And by having such thin walls, that's going to allow things to move through. And so they move through by filtration or diffusion or osmosis. And so that's, like maintaining fluid balance with the tissues is water moving through the capillaries. Okay, and so the blood regulates the water in the tissues by absorbing or releasing water depending on how it's needed. And capillaries can be kind of shut turned on and off, that we can have little muscles that that can contract to bypass the capillary. And so here at the bottom, here this is a bypass. Okay, and here are the capillaries, and these little muscles here can shut off the capillaries and just let the blood go past it. So you can you don't have to send all your blood to every place at once. So like when you go out for a run or exercising, lots of blood gets sent to your muscle cells, and then the blood doesn't go to your liver, and it doesn't go to your kidneys or your digestive tract. It just goes to your muscles. On the other hand, when you're, after you've eaten your Thanksgiving meal and you plop down in the chair and turn on the TV, your muscles get much less blood, and then your digestive system and your kidneys start cranking up, and they're going to use the blood. And so this is how we do it. Then we also have arteries and veins. The arteries are blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart. Veins carry blood toward the heart. These have thicker walls, usually with 3 layers. One layer is made up of epithelial tissue. Another layer is muscle and elastic tissue. And then the outer layer is just made up of collagen. Okay, and so you have these thicker walls. So there's no real exchange with materials here. These are just allowing blood to move from one place to another. Arteries have lots of muscle and lots of elastic tissue because they have blood under high pressure. So they have to be able to stretch, and then the muscle can control how much blood is going through. Veins don't have as much muscle or elastic tissue, but they have valves. Veins contain blood under low pressure, and the valves make sure the blood doesn't start flowing in the wrong direction. Okay, and so this is important because when you look at blood pressure in arteries and veins, blood pressure close to the heart is very high because the heart is forcing blood into the arteries. Okay, and after blood goes through the capillaries, it's been forced through these many, many very small vessels. Blood pressure is almost 0. Okay, and so it's moving very slowly, just kind of sloshing around. And the veins make sure it works only towards the heart. High blood pressure in large arteries near the heart, low blood pressure in the veins. Okay, and so the veins prevent blood from going backwards. Here it's always moving towards the heart. And when you have these valves, if something squeezes on the sides of the veins, the blood can't flow backwards. It'll make it flow toward the heart. This is called venous pumping. And in the little video, I talk about venous pumping as being important. Like when you're walking, it's very important in your legs. And it's why sitting or standing are hard on your legs and hard on your circulatory system, because you're not doing venous pumping. Particularly if you're sitting, but also if you're just standing in one place. So you want to get up and walk around once in a while. It's good for you. So don't study in a chair for 10 hours. Don't play video games in one position for 10 hours. And you hear about every once in a while somebody having a blood clot. Like these gamers that sit 2 days in a chair playing a game and then they die of a stroke, even though they're only 18 years old. It's because by laying in one position for so long, blood just sits there and it starts to clot. Okay, and so get up, move around, 10 minutes at a time in a chair. That's what you do. Okay, so then the big thing, we measure blood pressure. We use a blood pressure cuff, and we can figure out in a large artery like the brachial artery, which carries blood from a major blood vessel, this brachial artery, by using the blood pressure cuff, we can figure out what is the blood pressure when the heart is beating and then what the pressure when it's relaxed. So that's systolic and diastolic pressure. And so I don't think I gave you this slide in the little movie, but it's a nice one in that it kind of shows how they do this. They listen for the sound of blood going through there when they cut off the flow of blood. Um, and so blood pressure, good arteries, people with good circulatory systems should have blood pressures around 120 over 80. And these are in millimeters of mercury. So it's in like a pressure measuring device. And so that's systolic over diastolic pressure. And the pulse pressure is the difference between them, should be about 40 millimeters of mercury. There's lots of things that affect blood pressure. The heart, what the heart does affects blood pressure. How much blood is in the veins. If you're dehydrated, blood pressure can fall. Things like the resistance, whether the vessels are constantly squeezed or they're dilated, whether there's things blocking the vessels, how long the vessels are. These things affect them. And normally we want to maintain our blood pressure kind of near this 120 over 80, although if we're exercising, it can go up. You have a little vasomotor center in your brain stem that keeps track of blood pressure and is working with some glands to help you maintain blood pressure. And these things are trying to maintain a normal blood pressure. If something happens to you where your blood pressure starts to be elevated all the time, this is called hypertension. And I have to scoot down here to find out about hypertension to see if I have anything. Yep, here it's hypertension. Can you see the hypertension slide? Okay. So when we're young, like you guys, hypertension is really pretty rare. Okay, most young people will have normal or even slightly low blood pressure because their arteries are in good shape. But as people get older, more and more of them have hypertension. And we don't always know the cause, but we know a bunch of things are associated with or correlated with hypertension. One of them is diets that are high in salt or sodium. But other things are like obesity, age. There's race is strongly linked to hypertension. And hypertension is just when you're at rest, your blood pressure is just higher than it should be. Anything over 139 over 89 is considered hypertension if you're at rest. Okay, if you're active, if you're exercising, your blood pressure goes up. And this really doesn't bother people too much. You don't have any symptoms from hypertension if you're relatively healthy in other ways. But over time, hypertension damages lots of blood vessels all over the body. Hypertension damages the small blood vessels in the eye. It damages small blood vessels in the brain. It particularly damages blood vessels in the kidney, and so can lead to kidney problems. And over time, it causes the heart to work much, much harder than it should because the heart is constantly working too hard. And this really doesn't matter too much if you're relatively young. And if you have hypertension for only a year or two, it won't matter. But after 15 or 20 years of this, your heart muscle will thicken to do all this extra work. And but the heart muscle that gets thicker doesn't get enough oxygen. And so over time, this thick heart muscle may become short of oxygen, and then it gets replaced by fibrous tissue. And so the heart gets big and flabby, and this leads to congestive heart failure. And so the heart it's no longer muscular, it's more flabby, and it pumps less efficiently. And so then the people they'll have fluid backing up in their legs or in their lungs. They may have an inability to get their heart to work harder during exercise, so they're very susceptible to exercise-induced problems. But it's a form of heart failure. It's frequently termed congestive heart failure. And so this is a consequence of many years of hypertension. And so hypertension usually starts when you're younger and doesn't become a big problem until you're 50s, 60s, or 70s. Okay, and so like my mom was very active her whole life. Um, she enjoyed being outside, working in her garden, but she developed hypertension in her 50s, and it became pretty advanced, pretty severe hypertension by the time she was in her 70s. And she ultimately died of congestive heart failure. And the main symptom of that was she had fluid backing up in her limbs, and so that was right-sided heart failure. Okay, all right. Did that seem familiar to anybody? Heard any of those terms before? Hypertension. Most of us have heard about hypertension. Um, hypertension, a very common problem. You don't die of hypertension, you die of congestive heart failure, or you die of kidney failure. Um, if your heart is pumping ineffectively, you can't filter blood in your kidneys, and so your kidneys don't work. And your liver depends on getting adequate blood flow. I was just, they used to talk about congestive heart failure on TV shows, and when I was a kid, they'd say, "Well, her kidneys are shutting down. She's in the hospital, and her kidneys have shut down." And I thought, well, what does that mean, shut down? What does it mean? Turn them back on. But what they were saying is there's not enough blood flow to the kidneys, that the heart is not producing enough pressure. And that pressure, that lack of ability to produce pressure, is congestive heart failure. And it means organs won't have enough blood to do their job, that there'll be backups of fluid in various places. And so that can lead to kidney failure. It's bad news. Okay, did you have any questions? No. Okay, so I wanted to go over this hypertension stuff because there's a forum on hypertension for this week. And so it deals with hypertension and your risk. And so hypertension is strongly associated in the United States with age. Okay, as you get older, it's more of a problem. It's strongly associated with obesity. That's another really, really high risk. And then a high salt diet. That some people are salt sensitive, and too much salt will make them retain fluid, and that retaining fluid makes the heart work much harder. So and those probably not all the same causes, but those are the three common linkages or risk factors for hypertension. Okay. If you don't have any questions, I'm going to stop there. Next week, we're going to continue on with the cardiovascular system. I'll talk more about the heart next week. Today, there is a second program on the heart, and then I'll focus on the other really big risk, atherosclerosis. So if you haven't heard of atherosclerosis, it's the process that underlies most heart attacks and strokes. And so I mentioned it a little bit in the two programs this week. Next week, that'll be the focus, is atherosclerosis. Okay. All right. So, Caden, Hannah, any questions? Okay. An exam coming next week, the end of next week. So be ready for that. Forum and a quiz this week, just like usual. Okay. All right. So I'm going to end it, and we'll see you hopefully next week or possibly tomorrow. Okay. Bye.